Happy May the 1st, Epic 7, and welcome to the third quarter rotation for the expeditions. All of these teams were covered in my prior videos. I just slapped this together real quick to put them all in a convenient place so you could have this entire quarter's expedition sets all put together. No real new content here if you've watched my prior videos, fair warning. This is just a courtesy for newer players who are searching for expedition guides to have all the information for these three expeditions in one place. We'll tackle the fire expedition first. This is my team. It's by far and away, I think, the easiest, best full clear team. We're going to use Rose, Terranor Guard, Camilla, and Tamarin. Tamarin being the only 5-star unit in this batch. First we'll look at Terranor Guard. Terranor Guard you just want to build with damage. I put them on a Rage Pen set, but you can also get away with an attack or a destruction set, but Rage will make it much easier for full clear. You want to have at least 85% effectiveness to help him with his defense breaks. His S1 has a 50% chance to defense break, and 85% is the cap to maximize your chance to land debuffs in expeditions. You want a good damage artifact on him. I'm using Victorious Flag as a good damage artifact because no one else is using it. But you could also run Draco Plate. You could run Symbol of Unity, but you probably want that on someone else. Another really good artifact you can run is this 2-star artifact, Ancient Sheath. It's basically the same damage as Symbol of Unity, but it only works on his S1. Merciless Glutton is also a really good option. I mean, really, just whatever you can stick on him to do extra damage, that's what you want. Tamarin will be our healer for this fight. Now, don't worry about her effectiveness or effect resistance. I have them stacked up pretty high, but that's mostly for Nightmare Raid. For the Fire Expedition, you don't really need any effectiveness or effect resistance on Tamarin at all. You do want to run her as fast as possible. I think 230 to 240 is a really good speed range for this expo, but she can be slower. For an artifact, I've got her on Magahara's Tome. That helps her cycle her skills so that she is more likely to have attack buff up more often. You can run her on Idol's Cheer to help with pushing. The P.O.S. artifact is actually pretty good for an extra 20% crit damage and attack to all of your units. If you don't have either of those units, you can really put any healer artifact on her. Ice Rose is one of the cornerstones of this fight. She needs to be faster than the Ferris, so at least 200 speed. The faster the better because it helps cycle her skills. You want to have her on her S3 EE so that it reduces the cooldown on her S3. And I ran her on Prophetic Candlestick to again further reduce it, so she's going to be constantly spamming that S3 EE, which gives her a defense buff and attack buff to the whole team. If your Rose can't take a hit, you can run her on Sword of Vizera or Proof of Valor. They'll help make her beefier. You can also slap her on an effect resistance boosting artifact because Camilla needs ER. We'll get to that in a minute. Another option is a damage artifact like P.O.S. or Water Gun. But as for this effect resistance artifact, the reason that we want to have ER is Camilla. The tech for Camilla is she needs 200% effect resistance. The reason for the 200% effect resistance is that makes her fundamentally immune to being stripped. So when the Ferris does his initial strip, the attack buff given by Rose stays on her and she automatically dual attacks with Terranor Guard, who CR pushes your whole team. It's great synergy. Now you may be thinking, 200 effect resistance, how can I pull that off? Well, it's easy because Camilla's a warrior. So you can run Strat Gauntlet on her. That's 60% effect resistance. You can put Shamadra's Staff or some other ER boosting artifact on Tamarin for another 20%. That's 80% ER. And you can run the Bastion of Hope on Ice Rose, and that will get you another 50% ER. And you only have to come up with a pittance to get to the 200% total. Other than that, just make sure she's beefy enough to survive. I gave her a little bit of a high crit chance rate just to add to damage, but that's totally not necessary. Now, you do want to have Camilla's skills off. You only want her to S1. She'll constantly have attack buffs, so her S2 and S3 aren't necessary. At the start of the fight, Rose does her S3, and that puts the attack buff on Camilla, so she's already dual attacking. Now watch this. The Ferris does his thing, And Rose can't, or Camilla can't be stripped because of the effect resistance. That means when she attacks, Terra Norgard counters, pushes up your whole team, and you get a guaranteed clear of that first phase. Rose puts a defense buff on herself, and now the Ferris has no way of hurting her, even though her defense is kind of low. Tamarin heals everybody up, and now the team is 100% stabilized. Tamarin pushes everybody up. More attack buffs for Camilla, so she is maintaining her attack buff pretty much the entire fight. And that's why you can run her with her skills off. It's fast, it's clean, it's satisfying. There is a very tiny chance that you might walk into the second Ferris jump debuff phase in a very small window where Camilla doesn't have attack buff up. It happens maybe one out of every 40 or 50 runs, but with the exception of that, this team has never failed me. It's always full cleared. And there's the S3 from Terra Norgard. You saw that did pretty significant damage, mostly because I have his S3 skill max stigma'd. If you didn't put any stigma into Terra Norgard's S3, then just go ahead and turn his skills off too, so that he only uses his S1.
Battlefield's protector. Together! Move out!
This is a very satisfying team to watch. Now with this push, an attack buff is re-established on Camilla, and Terra Norgard takes us over 900k. The Ferris only has 1.8 million health, so if you pass 900k before he does his ultimate again, you know you've got a full clear on your hands. We're at 1 million, a full 100k ahead of target. Now because Camilla has the attack buff, she dual attacks, which pushes the entire team up and guarantees the clearing of the silence phase. Rose gets her S3 up. Tam's S3 is right behind it, and again the team is stabilized, and it continues like this until the end of the fight.
To your positions!
Here!
I think you'll really enjoy this team. There are other teams that do really well. Ones that rely on limited units, ones that rely on the units not shown here. If you need a different team, if you don't, for some reason, don't have these units, hit me up in the description. But I'm telling you, other than Rose, everybody on this team can be level 50. The first time I did this, I did a full clear with this. I did it with a level 50 Terra Norgard, level 50 Camilla, and my Tam was level 60, but she didn't need to be. She's probably the tankiest of anybody here. Rose was my only level 60 unit because I needed her to be able to take a hit, but honestly I probably could have put Proof or Sword of Azera on her and taken care of that. And here we are at 1.6 million.
Battlefield's protector.
And we're not even close to the Ferris doing his extinction hit. In fact, I think we still got at least 2 cycles left.
Radiant Spirit, Destina. Go away.
Now!
And there you go. A nice, clean, full clear team. The cornerstone of this team is a very beefy Rowana. You could probably get away with Destina, but because of her healing on counters, Rowana is really good for this fight. I've got mine on Stella Harpa just because that's what she's normally on, but to be honest with you, Idol's Cheer would probably be a better pick. Now if you can't quite make your Rowana thick enough, run her on Proof of Valor to get that extra level of beefiness on her. Next is our damage dealer. I decided to run Green Cidd for this fight. This is my normal PvP damage dealing Green Cidd. Nothing fancy about him. He's still on his S3 EE, which really doesn't do much for us in this fight. but I didn't want to change it. Wind Rider is a good damage artifact. Alexis Basket will be even better for him. You could also run Symbol of Unity, or if you want to work on the RNG, you could run Dust Devil. All of these artifacts would be great on Cidd. Now, if you really want to max your score, I think Ram is just going to be objectively better. You build a good damage dealing Ram and she should rack up an even higher score, but I didn't want to use a limited unit in this team. Mercenary Helga helps pull the team together. She's got CR pushes, she's got buffs, she does defense breaks, her kit's loaded, and she does really good damage too. So I went ahead and put her on a Rage Pen set just for added damage. I gave her Victorious Flag for some extra damage on top of that as well, and it also helps her survive if yours is only level 50. Now the star of the show is Lilka. Lilka works better than Ruzid here because mostly Lilka is a ranger. You want to have at least 80 or 85% effectiveness on her because her skills are loaded with defense breaks and attack breaks. She also gives a speed buff. Her slow is more consistent than Ruzid's, and since she's a ranger, she can run Song of Stars, which brings even more damage to the team. Lilka's S2 skill is an 85% CR push, and that will help push Cidd all the way up. Now, if you don't have Lilka or just don't want to use her for whatever reason, Righteous Thief Ruzid is still a really good unit for this team, and if the stars align, he should be able to push a full clear as well. At the start of the fight, the Symmachus applies weakness to the highest attack unit, which in this case is Cidd.
Not so sure about this.
Lilka's S2 pushes Cidd up 85%. This is where having Idol's Cheer on Rowana can help, because the Symmachus' next attack into Rowana would push Cidd the rest of the way. Helga puts a speed buff on everybody, and that'll let Cidd inch forward even though his weakness is applied. But my Helga was fast enough that she pushed up, did her S2, and that finished Cidd off, so he didn't lose really any turns at all. And now we're doing attacks into a target and a defense break. The slow debuff much more consistent off Lilka than off of Ruzid. Keeps the Symmachus from lapping us too much, so we're able to do extra damage. We get the 6th hit on the Symmachus, which triggers his counterattack, but that heals the entire team because of the presence of Rowana. That's part of what makes Rowana so great here, is you can do more than 6 attacks every round and not worry about being punished for it. If anything, you want to do more than 6 attacks per round because of the counter heals. That's what makes Dust Devil a really nice artifact for Cidd as well.
I'll start.
I'll help. Don't look down on me.
So every single unit on this team but Rowana spams a defense break. Lilka has a defense break on her S1. Helga has a defense break on her S1 and S2. Cidd has an Ignore ER defense break on his S1 while he has a speed buff. You should have no problem keeping the enemy broken throughout this fight. So here we are coming up on the halfway point of the fight, and we're a little bit behind on damage. About 100k behind. Weakness is applied again,
I'm not so sure about
and
this.
Lilka's S2 pushes Cidd all the way up to 85% on the CR bar, and Helga finishes the push off, and now Cidd's back in play. Not having the target debuff is hurting us a little bit, but we got the target as well as the really valuable slow, and now we're starting to rack up points quickly. There's only a couple of things that can really stop this from being an extremely high-scoring team. One is that your Cidd is not properly attack-tuned. Cidd doesn't have great base attack. In fact, Helga's attack is higher, so it is tricky to make sure your Cidd has more attack than your Helga. And you want to make sure the Cidd is the one that has the weakness, not the Helga, since Helga has pushes. The other one is making sure your Rowana can take a hit. As you can see, the Symmachus hits really hard. Rowana's not a knight, and we have no mitigation on the team. So you need to make sure your Rowana is thick enough to not die when the Symmachus does his turn. Rowana's artifact is really not that important for this fight, so in a pinch you can put Proof of Valor on her to take the edge off. And as for your attack tuning on the Cidd, if you are having trouble with Helga having the higher attack, put attack main boots on Cidd, or just use Ram if you have her. I know she's limited, but her base attack's through the roof, and you should have no problem with tuning. So here we are, almost at the end of the fight. We didn't have the best of luck sticking targets in this fight, 15% and all that, but we're still going to clear no problem. In fact, Lilka's going to be the one that puts it to bed. 1.8 million, full auto. I think this is probably now the best water team out there. Dark Expedition is one of the harder ones to full clear, so these guys are going to be lucky that you're hitting their expeditions. Because this is a really clean, full clear team. Now, it has a higher gear requirement than many of the other teams, but even if you don't make this gear requirement, it's still a very high scoring team. We're going to run the same Cecilia from the Earth Expedition. Again, 85% effectiveness is the goal to maximize debuffs and strips. Her S2EE because slow is really important. And I'm running her on Sword of Azera because my Cecilia is not very thick. Now, you could also run her on Proof of Valor if you don't have Sword of Azera. If you build yours a lot thicker than mine, you can run her on a damage artifact like P.O.S. You can also put her on Bastion of Hope to give Tamarin some effect resistance to help her deal with not getting her skills rolled back. Our damage dealer for this team is going to be Commander Lorena. Commander Lorena is best in slot for this. I have her on a Rage Pen set. You can try it with Destruction or Attack, but I really think you're going to want Rage Pen if you want to get the full clear. Otherwise, you'll still proc a very good score, but it won't be as deep. I'm running her on Ancient Sheath, which will make her S1 hit harder. You can also run her on Symbol of Unity, but it's the same attack bonus, or same damage bonus, I should say. Merciless Glutton is also a good option. The absolute best in slot piece for her would be Jacko's Symbol. That's what I normally run, but it's a limited artifact, so I'm not going to feature it in this fight. So we'll leave Ancient Sheath on her. No other stats required, just focus on damage. Fire Shuri is going to be my CR pusher. Lorena doesn't need the speed imprint, but Tamarin does, so make sure he's positioned to give Tamarin the 14 speed imprint. For an artifact, I'm running Sword of Judgment. It gives a secondary chance for his S1 to proc, which is more CR pushes. Best in slot, I think, would be Miss Confile to constantly spam defense breaks, but again, limited artifacts, so we're skipping that. Song of Stars would be the second best option. It really stacks up the damage, and I think it's probably the best option. Rosa Hargana is kind of a alternate version of Sword of Judgment. And lastly, you can always stick them on Midnight Bloom to reduce the stat requirements and make these higher build requirements a little easier to hit. I also like him to have a little bit of damage, but it's not really needed. For a healer, we're running the same Tamarin that we ran in the Fire Expedition. Again, her stats are a little high. You need 100% effect resistance and 85% effectiveness. The 100% effect resistance means you're immune to the cannon's skill cooldowns, so Tam will always have her turn cycling ready. I put her on Magahara's Tome to cycle her skills. I think it's important for this fight. It's a little hard to replace, but you could run Idol's Cheer to push Camilla around. You could run P.O.S. or some other damage artifact, or God forbid you can't get 100 ER on your own. You can run Bastion of Hope or some other ER boosting artifact like Unfading Memories. Make sure Tamarin is fast enough to cycle her skills too. You want her at least in the 220 range, I think. Faster the better on all of these units, with the exception of Camilla, who doesn't really need speed at all. Another nice thing about this team is, unlike many other Dark Expedition teams, you don't have to manual the first part of it and wait for the boss to take his turn and then turn auto on. You just mash auto right from the get-go. There's no need to wait. Now, everybody's taking some electrocution damage, but Tamarin is a strong enough healer to stay ahead of it as long as you have a little bit of bulk on all of your units. Because nobody has a way to cleanse electrocution off, with the exception of Tam. So every single round you'll take electrocution damage. Nice dual attack there. And you notice our health gets a little bit low, especially on the turn where Tamarin does her S1. We got our S2 off, and that tops everybody back off. And Tamarin gets to transform, and her S2 heals everybody up. This is why it's important to have the 100% effect resistance on Tamarin, because that cannon will constantly roll skills back, and if she doesn't have the 100% resistance, she won't be able to transform, which is important for healing and maintaining your turn cycling. Now, much like Fire Expedition, this is a similar CR push team. Every time Shuri takes an attack, either his S3 or his S1, it pushes your units up. And his S3 can push the cannon back. Now, unfortunately, you can't push the Gigantus back, or else you could cheese the fight. But this S3 is able to push the cannon back, though I think I get resisted here. Yeah, I got resisted. But it still pushed the entire team up.
Lance of Steel.
The only thing we're missing is a source of speed buff. But because of the CR pushing out of Shuri, that makes up for not having a speed buffer. Now, alternate units. There really is no alternate unit for Tamarin. You can run Falcon or Clury as your knight, or Fire Lilius as your knight, but to get maximum efficiency out of the fight, you'll have to manual the fight until the Gigantus takes his first turn, then you can turn it on auto. That's why I really like Cecilia for this. There's no manual portion to the fight. It's full auto, not semi-auto. You can replace Shuri with Cerise, and you get the speed buff, which makes up for the CR pushing a little bit, but it's nowhere near as efficient. As for the DPS unit, if you don't want to run Camilla, you can run Luna, especially if she's on her S1 EE that gives 15% CR pushing when she attacks. Or you could run Landy. Her damage scaling and AoE speed buff can help push things along a bit. You won't score nearly as high as Commander Lorena scores running those units, but they both can work in this fight. As for Tamarin, there really is no replacement. If you don't have a Tam, do the side story, summons, and get one. She's too important to so many different aspects of PvE. Now that defense buff's a problem, but we've got a strip on Cecilia's S2, and we got it. But if we didn't get the strip there, Tamarin's S1, while she's in idle form, is also a strip, and that's why you want to have 85% effectiveness on Tamarin as well, so you aren't just relying on Cecilia to strip that defense buff. Getting rid of that defense buff is kind of key to pushing phase. Now we've got a little bit of a problem. We just now have crossed the 900k health mark, and we are really behind on turns. The boss is only about 3 turns away from extincting us, so we really need to make up for lost time here. A lot of this fight depends on Shuri proccing his S1 twice with Sword of Judgment, or sticking the target debuff if you run Song of Stars, and a lot of it relies on getting rid of that defense buff and getting a defense break onto the Gigantus. The S3 into that defense break will certainly help. We're up to 1.1 million.
Listen to my song. Shine free. Grant me the strength to destroy evil.
We'll refresh the slow debuff and the attack down.
Together.
We strip that defense buff off with Tamarin's S1. 1.3 million.
1, 2. This is the end.
1.4. Refresh the defense break. CR pushed everybody up. We're making pretty good time now. This is a lot better than the first half of the fight. I think we might be fine. Okay, this is the last phase. We've got one round to do about 270k damage. That's going to be tight. 1.6. Tamarin, your transform timing is perfect.
Do my song. Shine free. Lance of steel.
Can we stick a slow debuff? Nice, we got the slow. That'll help us with some time.
Let's fight
1.7.
I'll break you into 1,000 pieces.
Big push up from Shuri.
Fall asunder.
All enemies will fall to my spear.
And Lorena brings it home for a whopping 100k damage off her S3, and that gets us our 1.8 million. Well, hopefully these teams help you with your expeditions this quarter. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section. I always do my best to answer questions. Though I believe the teams I've run here are probably the best teams, they are certainly not the only options out there. If you've got a team that works better for you, that's great. Please share it in the comments. Maybe it'll help somebody else out who doesn't have the units I'm running. And don't fret about gear too much. You don't have to full clear. In fact, it's best that you don't always full clear, because that helps other people get their expeditions in as well. And with the open expedition system, even doing a moderate score will still help you clear the entire board for the month. All that said, I hope all of you have a great month of May, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a good one, everybody.